My name is Lauren Carter. I'm 29 years old and a senior trauma nurse in North Carolina. Most days, I work 12-hour shifts in the pediatric trauma unit, and most nights, I come home to a quiet apartment, make tea, and try not to think too hard about the weight I carry in my chest. I used to think that meant I had balance. I thought a life with structure was a life well lived. I had my routines, my goals, my person. Daniel was that person. We had been together 3 years, lived in a downtown condo with beige walls and stainless steel everything. He was a defense attorney, smart and sharp, and he always looked like he had somewhere important to be. We weren't loud or dramatic. We didn't fight about little things or storm out over takeout orders. We made space for each other, or at least I thought we did. Mornings were quiet like us. I left before sunrise most days, and Daniel always kissed the top of my head on my way out. When I came home, he was usually still working his laptop, glowing from the kitchen counter, a glass of bourbon half full beside it. We had this thing where he'd text me during the day. Not much, just a check-in, a little line like, "Everything okay over there?" or "How's your tiny human squad doing?" I saved those messages. I don't know why. I guess I thought they meant something more than they did. My job was chaos. Alarms codes, crying parents, needles, tubes, tiny lives hanging by moments. But I loved it. It made me feel useful, in control even if the world outside the hospital wasn't always kind. With Daniel, it felt like I had a place to land. Like we were building something stable, quiet, good. My sister Melissa used to joke that I was the boring one, that I picked safe guys who wore loafers and paid off their student loans early. I didn't mind being the boring one. Boring meant secure. Boring meant I could exhale. On Sundays, we'd go to the farmer's market. I'd pick flowers. He'd make fun of my weird obsession with heirloom tomatoes. We had favorite shows, favorite takeout, favorite silence. That's what I remember the most now. The silence. How it used to feel like comfort. How I used to believe that when people go quiet, it's because they feel safe. It didn't cross my mind that sometimes silence is the first symptom of distance, or that people can sit right beside you and still be moving away. I look back now and wonder how I missed it. How many moments I chalked up to stress or work or timing. How often I filled in the gaps with my own assumptions thinking we were aligned. And maybe that's the hardest part. The slow drift that you don't notice until you've already let go of the shoreline. I thought I had love. I thought I had partnership. I thought the people closest to me wanted to see me whole. I used to think family meant loyalty. Turns out it just meant strategy. Melissa always walked into a room like she owned it. She had this way of laughing a little too loud, tossing her hair back like she didn't care who was watching. People loved her for it. Our parents used to say she had sparkle, that she was unpredictable but always the life of the party. I used to think they meant it as a compliment. Now I'm not so sure. Growing up, if Melissa skipped school, it was because she was adventurous. If I did, it was irresponsible. If she talked back, they said she had spirit. When I did, I was called difficult. That pattern never really changed. It just dressed itself up in adult terms. Melissa made messes and I was expected to clean them quietly. Still, I loved her. Or maybe I just loved the version of her I thought could still grow up. Daniel met her at our engagement dinner. She showed up 20 minutes late, kissed him on the cheek, and told me I had good taste for once. He laughed. I did too, though something about her tone made my stomach shift. It passed quickly. Everything with Melissa did. Daniel was the type of man who always looked ready to argue in a courtroom. He wore tailored suits even to casual dinners, knew how to make anyone feel like they were being interviewed, even when he was just asking where you went to college. There was something compelling about that, especially in the beginning. He made me feel chosen, like I was part of his plans. From the outside, we looked solid. He worked late, I worked early. We passed each other with tired smiles and soft touches. It was a rhythm that didn't require much. But looking back, maybe that was part of the problem. Melissa started visiting more often. Sometimes she'd drop by the condo to borrow a charger or grab a book. Other times she'd text and say she was in the neighborhood. I didn't think much of it at first. She was my sister. Daniel was my fiancé. I trusted them both in different but deep ways. It was the little things. A compliment she gave Daniel about his cologne delivered with a smile that lingered. The way he stood a little straighter when she entered the room. Jokes between them that didn't include me. I told myself it was harmless. Melissa was like that with everyone. There was one night I came home early from a long shift. I opened the door to find them on the couch, just the two of them. A bottle of red wine open on the table, 2 glasses nearly empty. They looked up at the same time. Melissa laughed and said she'd come by to return a sweater. Daniel nodded and said they were just catching up. I walked into the kitchen to drop my bag, then stood behind the wall and listened. There wasn't much. Just a pause, some silence, then Melissa saying she should go. I stepped out and smiled, told her not to worry about the sweater. That night, Daniel was quiet. He didn't ask how work was or whether I'd eaten. He said he was tired and scrolled through his phone while I took a shower. I stood under the hot water trying to shake the feeling, but it stuck. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Melissa was my sister. Daniel loved me. Those were facts, and facts didn't change just because your gut said something else. Another time at a small family gathering, Melissa made a toast. She raised her glass and said I'd finally found someone who wouldn't bore me to sleep. Everyone laughed. Daniel looked down and smirked. I forced a grin and took a sip of wine that tasted like nothing. When I asked her later what she meant, she said she was just teasing, that I was too sensitive. She always said that when she went too far, and I always believed her. The days kept rolling by. Work, dinners, the occasional brunch. Nothing loud, nothing obvious, but I started feeling like a third wheel in my own relationship. I'd catch Daniel looking at her when he thought I wasn't watching. Or maybe he didn't care if I was. Either way, it chipped away at something I couldn't name. I told myself it was wedding stress, that I was tired and reading into things that Melissa would never, that Daniel couldn't. I chose not to bring it up. I didn't want to be that person, the one who makes a scene over nothing. I told myself that trust meant letting people be close without hovering, that love meant not needing constant reassurance. So I kept showing up, kept planning the wedding, kept folding laundry and booking vendors and laughing when Melissa said something half cruel, disguised as a joke. I didn't know it then, but I was already standing at the edge of a cliff, and I was the only one who thought we were still on steady ground. It started small. Daniel stopped asking how my day was. He'd come home, drop his keys in the bowl by the door, and go straight to the couch without looking at me. Sometimes he'd nod when I spoke. Sometimes he didn't respond at all. I told myself it was work, a heavy caseload, a trial that didn't go his way, but that excuse only carried so far. He started taking his phone into the bathroom. At first, I didn't notice. Then I did, and once I did, I couldn't unsee it. He would angle the screen away from me when I sat beside him. The password changed. The chime of a new message made him flinch. Glance swipe. I asked him one night gently if something was wrong. He said I was being dramatic and walked away. I found myself apologizing for even asking. That was new. I started measuring my words before I spoke, started doubting my own instincts. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was being too sensitive, like Melissa always said. Maybe love just looked different under stress. Some nights he'd stay out late and say it was a client dinner. He stopped touching me, not in any big way, just in the small ones that mattered most. No hand at my lower back, no casual brush of the shoulder, no kiss on the forehead before I left for work. I tried to ignore the ache that settled in my chest when I realized I had memorized our routines so well that its absence felt like grief. Melissa texted less. She used to send memes, voice notes, the occasional screenshot of a dress she thought I should wear to the bachelorette party. Then silence. I thought maybe she was giving me space. I thought maybe it was just life being loud in other directions. I had no reason to think otherwise. Then I opened Instagram. It was a blurry photo. Melissa's story. Gone in 24 hours, but not before I saw it. They were at some crowded bar laughing. Her lipstick too red. His arm around her shoulders. His hand resting on her thigh like it belonged there. I blinked, backed out, then opened it again. It was still there. My stomach twisted. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I messaged her. No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. The next morning I was blocked. I couldn't explain the feeling. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder, like ice forming under the skin. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't. What would I even say that my sister and my fiancé were drinking together while I was charting vitals for kids with broken spines? That a blurry photo undid everything I thought I knew. I kept moving. Wake up, go to work, smile at patients, hand parents tissues, clock out, go home, sit in silence. I ate less, spoke less. Even the nurses who knew me best stopped asking if I was okay. I think they could feel it. Whatever version of me was still functioning, it wasn't the full one. 2 weeks later, Daniel came home and didn't speak for almost an hour. He poured himself a drink, sat on the couch, and stared at the TV like it had done something to him. I sat beside him, said his name once, twice, then finally asked if he was going to talk to me. He didn't even look up, just said it flatly. I think we need a break. I don't feel the same anymore. No reasons, no apology, just silence. The next morning, he left for work without saying goodbye. 2 days later, I came home to find his side of the closet empty. A single note on the counter said, "Take care." The apartment felt gutted. I stood in the kitchen, hands shaking, and didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears were too deep to surface. I went to work the next day like nothing had happened. Held hands with a 6-year-old who'd been in a car crash. Helped a teenager breathe through a panic attack. Charted every dose, every IV. I did my job. I was useful. I was invisible. Days bled into each other. Weeks passed. I lived in a fog. The world moved and I stood still. I didn't check social media. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want confirmation of what I already knew. Then it came. In the mail. A thick ivory envelope with my full name written in soft calligraphy. No return address. I opened it at the counter with one hand while stirring soup with the other. Inside was a wedding invitation. Melissa Hart and Daniel Collins request the honor of your presence. I stopped reading. My vision blurred. I pulled the card closer. The date was printed in bold serif font. June 17th, my wedding date. The venue listed was the exact vineyard I had chosen 6 months ago. The one with the floral arch and the white chairs I'd pinned to a vision board. The one Daniel had said was perfect. My hand started to shake. The invitation slid from my fingers and landed on the floor. I stared at it like it had teeth. My name wasn't anywhere in it, but it was everywhere in between. I sank to the kitchen floor, legs folded beneath me, palms flat on the tile. The envelope sat open beside me like a wound. They didn't just fall in love. They built something out of the pieces they took from me. Same day, same place, same man. I picked up the invitation again, held it tighter this time, read every word. Then I set it back down, sat still, silent. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I just sat there surrounded by the ghost of a wedding I'd already planned, wondering how long they'd been planning it too. I met Ethan Maddox on a Thursday night shift that never seemed to end. A 7-year-old had been airlifted in after a bike accident. The trauma bay was a storm of movement and noise. I was charting vitals when he walked in calm, like the eye of it all. He didn't introduce himself right away, just stepped into the chaos gloved up and asked for suction. His voice was quiet but clear, the kind that made people listen. He was filling in for one of our regular surgeons, someone out on paternity leave. I didn't expect to see him again, but I did. The next night then, again after that. He had the stillness about him, the kind that doesn't need attention. He moved through the hospital like he belonged but didn't want to prove it. I ran into him in the break room once, both of us reaching for the last clean mug. He let me take it, said nothing but offered a tired nod. That was how it started. Small things, shared space, quiet acknowledgments. We started taking the same elevator down. I don't know if it was on purpose. Some nights he'd hold the door with one hand and a protein bar in the other. I'd lean against the wall, arms crossed, and we wouldn't say much. But it wasn't awkward. It felt like a pause in the noise. One night after a brutal shift, I found him leaning against the hood of his car in the lot. I walked past him, keys in hand, and he looked up. Asked if I wanted to sit. I hesitated, then did. We stayed there for almost 2 hours, just sitting in the dark, the lot half empty, our breath visible in the air. I don't remember how I started telling him. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way he didn't try to fix anything. I told him about Melissa, about Daniel, the photo, the wedding. I said it all slowly, like testing how the words tasted after months of keeping them in. He didn't interrupt, didn't flinch, just listened. When I showed him the invitation, he took it in both hands and looked at it like a case file. Then he said it, plain. We should go. I laughed, thought he was joking, but he wasn't. You deserve to be seen, he said. Let them realize what they gave up. I shook my head. That's not who I am. He looked at me. Maybe not, but maybe it's who they think you aren't. I didn't answer that night. I went home, brushed my teeth, stared at my reflection, and tried to find the version of myself I used to be. I thought about all the times I stayed quiet, all the ways I tried to take up less space, and then I thought about what it would mean to walk into that wedding and not shrink. The next morning, I opened the invitation again. It still made my skin crawl, but I opened the RSVP tab and typed 3 letters. Yes. The weeks that followed were quiet but full. I worked my shifts, drank more water, slept better. I told no one Not my coworkers, not my parents. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about reclaiming the version of me that trusted her own footing. I bought a dress. Navy silk smooth as water. I tried it on in a store lit by warm bulbs and soft music. The woman at the counter asked if it was for something special. I said yes, but didn't explain. It wasn't for a date, or a party, or revenge. It was for a chapter I hadn't written yet. One where I wasn't left out of the story. One where I stood exactly where I was meant to be, even if only for a moment. The vineyard looked exactly like the photos I had saved months ago. Rows of white chairs curved in perfect lines under strings of hanging lights. Ivory tablecloths fluttered in the breeze, and the floral arch stood tall in the distance, lush with peonies and blush roses. We parked just outside the main lot. Ethan stepped out first and walked around to open my door. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. His presence was steady, unrushed. That grounded kind of calm that doesn't ask for attention but earns it anyway. We arrived late on purpose. The ceremony had just started, a quartet playing something soft and classical. The guests were all seated. We moved along the side path slow and deliberate. I could feel the shift ripple across the chairs as we passed. Heads turned, whispers flickered through the air like sparks. I kept my eyes forward. My heels sank slightly into the grass, but I didn't falter. Ethan's hand rested gently at the small of my back, not as possession, but as presence. At the altar stood Melissa, dressed in lace and confidence. Her hair swept into a low bun, her smile stretched too wide. She looked like she was starring in her own movie. Daniel stood beside her, jaw tight, shoulders tense, like the suit he wore was one size too small. Their eyes met mine at the same time. Melissa blinked. Just once. Then looked away. Daniel didn't. He stared like he wasn't sure if I was real or a memory stepping out of place. We took seats at the very back, but the attention followed us. It clung like humidity. The officiant cleared his throat and tried to regain control of the moment. Words floated forward, talk of vows and promises. But it was background noise. Every word felt muted under the weight of what wasn't being said. I didn't come to make a scene. That was never the point. I came to make peace with the version of me that would have otherwise stayed home, too small to take up space. Halfway through the ceremony, Melissa interrupted. She turned to face the guest's eyes, scanning like she was soaking in applause that hadn't been given. Then she grabbed the mic from the officiant with a playful laugh. "I just want to say something before we do our vows," she said. Her voice was too bright, too rehearsed. Daniel glanced at her, confused, but didn't stop her. She looked directly at me. Her eyes held a glint of something I recognized. Control. That old hunger for attention dressed up as charm. "It's funny, really," she said, all sugar and salt. "Daniel actually proposed to my sister first. I guess I was the better fit all along." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was surgical. No gasps, no outrage, just air that felt sliced clean open. I didn't move, didn't blink. I wasn't sure what I felt. Anger didn't rise, embarrassment didn't land, just stillness. Like I had stepped outside the moment and was watching it from somewhere far away. Then Ethan stood. No loud gesture, no drama. He just adjusted his jacket and took one slow step forward. "Actually," he said, "I'm her upgrade." That was it. 3 words, clear, precise, unapologetic. The effect was instant. Someone in the second row let out a breath like they had been holding it. A murmur passed through the crowd. Even the breeze seemed to pause. Melissa's face dropped, just slightly, like a mask that didn't fit quite right anymore. Daniel looked like he had forgotten how to breathe. Ethan turned and walked back to his seat, his face unreadable. He sat beside me, crossed one leg over the other, and took my hand. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. The officiant stumbled through the rest of the speech. Melissa's smile didn't quite recover. Daniel's hands fidgeted at his sides. They finished the vows, said the words, kissed without warmth. The applause that followed was polite, but distracted. Everyone kept glancing back. They had invited me to watch them win. Instead, they gave me the final word, and I never even had to say it. The reception hall was everything I thought it would be. Crystal chandeliers, oversized centerpieces, too many place cards printed in gold foil. It was curated down to the last flower petal. Perfect, at least on paper. Our table was tucked into the far corner beside a cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years, and a woman who kept calling me Laura. I didn't correct her. Ethan sat beside me, calm as always, sipping wine and watching the room like he was reading between the lines. I let the noise settle over me without trying to follow it. But I could feel the eyes. They drifted toward us like magnets. Some curious, some unsure, others just trying to piece the story together. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. Our presence had already shifted the room. Melissa floated between tables, smiling too hard. Her laugh came out sharp. She hugged guests with one arm and glanced in our direction more than once. Daniel stayed close to the bar. He looked like he was unraveling even if his tie was still straight. Dinner came and went. Speeches started. Melissa's maid of honor slurred her way through a toast about loyalty. Someone laughed too loudly, then stopped midway. Daniel's best man made a joke about second chances. I didn't smile. Ethan leaned in and asked if I wanted to leave. I shook my head. Not yet. Half an hour later, Daniel finally approached. He crossed the floor slowly, hands in his pockets, jaw tight like he was still building up to it. I looked up just as he stopped beside our table. Ethan didn't move, but I felt him watching. Daniel asked if we could talk, just for a minute. I nodded and stood, followed him past the dance floor out to the side hallway near the restrooms. The music faded behind us. We stood in silence for a few seconds. He looked different, older, or maybe just exposed. You look different, he said finally. I am. He shifted his weight, ran a hand through his hair. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. Things happened fast with Melissa, he said, eyes low. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you did. He nodded slowly. I know, I'm sorry for how I handled everything. You didn't deserve that. I believed he meant it, but it didn't matter anymore. You could have been honest. You didn't have to lie, you could have left clean. He sighed. I know I should have. It got messy, and I didn't know how to undo it without ruining everything. He wanted to rewrite it, not the truth, just his role in it. But the story had already been told. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for explanations. I just looked at him and said nothing. Silence was its own sentence. After a few more seconds, I turned and walked away. Ethan was waiting near the doors. I walked straight toward him. My heels clicked across the tile like punctuation marks. Daniel didn't follow. Back in the hall, the reception carried on. Music, drinks, forced smiles. Melissa caught my eye once, then looked away. She didn't come over. Ethan and I stayed another hour. We danced once, laughed with a few distant relatives, then we left without saying goodbye. As we walked out to the car, I felt lighter, like something had settled. I didn't come for revenge. I didn't come to make a scene. I just showed up. And sometimes that's enough to burn everything down without ever lighting a match. It started quietly. A week after the wedding, I got an email from someone I barely knew. She worked in Daniel's firm, said she hoped I was doing well, then almost as an afterthought mentioned that Ethan's name had stirred conversation. More than conversation, really. Whispers. Apparently, some of Daniel's clients were longtime Maddox family donors. Big ones. The kind who moved money with quiet intention. And they talked. It didn't take long before those whispers turned into distance. Not loud, not public. Just meetings that didn't happen. Contracts that stalled. I didn't follow the details. I didn't need to. I knew how reputations worked. I knew what it meant when the people you counted on started screening your calls. No one said my name out loud, but I felt it around the edges. I wasn't just the ex anymore. I was the one who showed up with a legacy standing beside her, and I didn't flinch. Melissa never posted photos from the honeymoon. There were no hashtag thank yous, no smiling airport selfies, just silence. She went dark on social media for a while, then came back with wellness quotes and makeup tutorials. Then she called. The number lit up my phone late one evening. I stared at it, let it ring, then picked up on the last vibration. Her voice cracked almost immediately. It's me. I said nothing. I need to talk to you, she said. Her words came fast, shallow. He left. Daniel. Took everything. Said I pushed him into it, that I used him, that I was trying to outshine you. She was unraveling, thin and unguarded. Her voice sounded like it hadn't rested in days. He blames me for everything, she said, the fallout, the firm, the wedding. I listened. She didn't apologize. Not once. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't acknowledge the part where she broke something that had taken me years to build. She just wanted relief, not forgiveness, not understanding, just someone to catch her. There was a pause. Then she asked, do you think we could talk? Really talk, maybe try again. I sat on the edge of the couch staring out the window. My voice was steady. You didn't want a sister, Melissa. You wanted a spotlight. She didn't respond. I hung up. 2 months later, someone told me she moved back to our hometown. Took a job waitressing at a cafe off the interstate, started a YouTube channel about healing from betrayal. It never made it past a few dozen views. I never looked it up. Daniel left the firm quietly, tried starting his own practice, but without the right names behind him, it stalled. Last I heard, he moved out of state. Atlanta, maybe. He called once. I didn't answer. There was no explosion, no final fight, just erosion, the kind that happens slowly until nothing is left standing. I didn't seek revenge, I didn't tell lies, I just showed up once. And somehow, that was enough. It's strange how silence can echo louder than anything else. We didn't rush anything after the wedding. Ethan and I kept living the way we had been, steady, quiet, no big declarations, just mornings with coffee, evenings with soft music, and the kind of silence that feels like home. We started cooking more, nothing fancy, just pasta, grilled vegetables, things that filled the kitchen with warmth. Sometimes we played cards at the table after dinner. Sometimes we just sat together, not needing to fill the space. I went back to work with a lighter step. Something had shifted, not just because of what I left behind, but because of what I chose to carry forward. I no longer felt like I was trying to prove I was okay. Ethan never tried to fix me. He never treated my past like something to manage. He just held space for it, made room for all the parts of me, even the ones still mending. One Sunday morning, sunlight slid across the hardwood floors, and the smell of coffee drifted from the stove. I was still in pajamas, curled up on the couch, hair a mess, socks mismatched. Ethan walked over, handed me my mug, then sat beside me. He took a slow sip, then looked over. "Would you want to do this forever?" That's how he asked. No ring, no script, just a question that felt like an invitation to keep going. I smiled and said yes. We got married 6 months later in a small garden just outside Asheville. 30 guests, folding chairs on the lawn, no speeches, no string quartet, just laughter, real and unperformed. My parents came, a few close friends, no one brought drama, no one tried to give advice. It felt like breathing. I wore a soft ivory dress that didn't try to impress anyone. Ethan wore a navy suit with sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists. We stood under a wooden arch, wrapped in eucalyptus and light. There were no rehearsed lines, no declarations read for show, just two people who had walked through the fire and decided to walk forward anyway. Afterward, we ate lemon cake and passed around pitchers of iced tea. The kids chased each other between the benches. Someone played an old guitar near the tree line. I looked around and felt full, not in the loud, overwhelming way, in the quiet, steady way that tells you you're exactly where you're supposed to be. That day wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that made it enough. Looking back, I used to think silence meant surrender, that if you didn't defend yourself loudly, people would write their own version of your story and believe it. For a long time, I was afraid of being misunderstood, afraid that if I didn't speak, I'd be erased. But I've learned that stillness isn't weakness, it's presence. It's knowing who you are and choosing not to perform it for anyone else. The people who tried to tear me down thought I'd stay broken, just because I stayed quiet. What they didn't see was that silence can hold strength, real strength. Not the kind that needs to prove anything, but the kind that knows it doesn't have to. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to make scenes. You can walk away with your dignity intact and still come out on top. I didn't win anything. Not in the way people think. There was no revenge, no final speech, no grand moment of justice, but I built something real. And that to me is everything. Ethan and I live a life that's honest and simple. We don't chase attention. We don't owe anyone explanations. Our story is quiet, and that's what makes it whole. There are people who will never understand why I didn't fight back harder, why I didn't post my side, confront them, burn bridges on the way out. But I wasn't walking away to disappear. I was walking away to begin again. There's a kind of peace that only comes after the storm, when you stop trying to control what others think and just live. That peace isn't loud, it doesn't ask for applause, it just feels like breathing. I know now that not every battle is worth your energy. Sometimes the real power is in letting people destroy themselves while you quietly rebuild. No announcements, no warnings, just growth. And maybe that's what I want most to share, that you can choose calm, you can choose restraint, and still be the strongest person in the room. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever stayed silent not out of fear, but out of strength?